One of the good things about being a billionaire surely must be that you've got enough money already and you don't need to borrow none. So why then are America's billionaires borrowing so much money? And where are they getting it from, and what's it costing you? Sam Pizzigatti, writing in inequality.org, said, "The awesomely affluent are using their art collections and any other assets they may hold, everything from classic car collections to shares of stock in the companies they run, as collateral for loans from America's biggest banks. Why would billionaires need loans? The simple answer is they don't need loans, they need tax breaks, and they can get them by borrowing at exceedingly low interest rates off their mountains of assets." I think the problem with not having a holistic approach to the world's problems is that you find yourself talking 1 minute about homelessness being criminalised in Los Angeles, and the next minute people using their art collections as collateral to get bank loans to avoid tax. Pizzigatti continues, take Elon Musk. In 2019, he took out $61 million in mortgages on 5 properties he owned in California. At that time, he also had some 40% of his personal shares in Tesla pledged as collateral for still other loans. Musk's millions in borrowed cash have been bankrolling his lavish lifestyle and new investments. These millions have also been providing a sweet end run around Uncle Sam at tax time. If Musk had sold some of his Tesla shares or surplus California properties to raise fresh cash, he would have owed capital gains tax on his sale earnings. But by borrowing for the cash, he let his Tesla and California property assets continue to increase in value and at the same time sidestep any taxes. I suppose the reason a story like this is interesting is because nothing illegal is happening, and the idea that individual wealth is contingent on individual success and ingenuity prevails, when what we actually have are systems that are specifically designed to ensure the continuing prosperity of people already in fortuitous positions. That's an irrational way to run a society. I'm not into centralized power. I'm not into why don't we let the state run everything. But the state is sort of running everything, but it's just not running it for ordinary people. The state is involved in lives. It's involved in creating loophole opportunities, weird things where you just don't pay the tax that's agreed upon, even though it's kind of favourable tax arrangements for wealthy people anyway. I suppose what I see when I read stuff like this is an opportunity to completely reevaluate the way that society is organised and structured. And again, it's not about the sort of finger pointing at particular individuals, rather observing that if you actually were interested in changing the world, you could. It's not just the way things are and nothing else would work and everything else has been tried and what do you want to do, live in communist Russia? It's not that. It's like, stuff like this is mental. People that are already billionaires, you know, their tax experts will go, hey, listen, so you can avoid paying this massive amount of tax, which you don't want to pay really, because you think, like, you know, you can understand, I can understand people not want to pay tax. No one wants to pay tax. I was going on bombs and not spending it on helping people, not spending it on solving problems like homelessness, not spending it on looking after nature, even under apparently progressive governments, still Native American sacred sites being plundered for energy resources. You know, I'm no friend of those kind of ideas and policies. I'm no advocate for mass taxation. But what I think it's important to acknowledge is that you already have the state involved in your life. You have them involved in your life in continuing to sort of calcify, ossify economic inequality in a manner that is beyond what state governance should be about. It should be about, like, these are our resources, this is what we've got, we pay sort of tax in order to pay for these resources. No, it's like a mad game that just appears like a facade of fairness that really conceals systems of inequality as their primary function. Billionaires can get loans these days at rates under 1%, and they've been rushing to take advantage. The wealth management department, like, where it's like if you're poor, you'll be getting some loan shark bullshit, where it's like a massive percentage and then some geezers are coming, bang, on the door, the bailiffs are on their way, rat-a-tat-tat on the glass or the door. What principles are at play here? What are there? It's somewhere between nihilism and downright sociopathy. The wealth management departments at America's top banks, the offices that service America's most affluent, have now made loans that total over $600 billion in value, a sum that's running 17.5% higher than the comparable total from the middle of last year. Loaning to the rich has essentially become a major part of the business that major banks do. These loans, the Financial Times observed, currently add up to 22.5% of the bank's total loan books, up from 16.3% in mid-2017. Can I borrow some money, please? Absolutely not. Why? Because you need it. JP Morgan and Citi are now lending more to a small number of ultra high net worth clients than to their millions of credit card customers. A decade ago, JP Morgan was lending 5 times as much to credit card customers as it did to private clients. Like, it's another way. Do you remember that crash in 2008? It's because they were doing this sort of shit, wasn't it? Like finding ways where it's not just practical. I've got a company. The company's worth this. Lend me some money on the value of that company and we will use that to build the company. These houses are worth this much money. If you lend us this money, we'll be able to pay you. They went into mad, giddy, stupid, weird, cruel, crazy games, and it led to a global financial crisis from which many people are still reeling. This is the same sort of mentality. Hang on a minute, we don't need to lend money to people who need the money. We can lend money to people who don't need the money. That way that money won't ever be taxed properly, and therefore those people will keep all of their money. And you can see what's happening. During the course of the pandemic, there's been this massive transfer of wealth. That's because of this sort of shit. What makes banks like JP Morgan, Citi and Morgan Stanley so eager to extend these billions of loans to the rich at low interest rate? One reason, the loans come as close to risk-free as risk-free could be. A more important reason, big banks cherish close relationships with rich people. These rich often run extremely large corporate empires and can steer their corporate banking business to the banks that cater to their personal needs. Elon Musk, for instance, has used Morgan Stanley, his personal lender, for Tesla stock and convertible debt offerings. So even things that aren't illegal, it's like when we were talking about Pelosi and all that kind of stuff. Stuff that ain't illegal but seems a bit off key and essentially just shows you how these institutional relationships work. Perhaps it's no different than if we all knew each other and were like, I'll tell you what, I'll lend you a bit of money if you buy stuff from my shop when you get, yeah, okay, mate. But at that scale, it's not causing international debt crises. These kind of ideologies don't scale well. I think centralisation financially and even at the level of state continually lead to this kind of, if not literal corruption, sort of practical corruption. The only losers in all this loaning and borrowing are, of course, average Americans. You are the loser. Of course you are. You must have known that, who pay their taxes while wealthy people avoid theirs. So if you're poor or normal, you pay your tax, and if you're super rich, you don't pay your tax. Well, what's that for? What kind of relationships? What kind of messaging? What kind of relationship with the country? Working Americans pay price for that avoidance. They depend on public services that tax shortfalls cripple. Rich people, meanwhile, don't use public services. They live in private worlds made ever more comfortable by the asset-backed loans that have become, points out Institute for Policy Studies analyst Chuck Collins, one of the principal tools the ultra-wealthy are using to game their tax obligations down to zero. The reason it's important is because during the pandemic there's been a massive wealth transfer. That's not a coincidence. It's because there's all sorts of legislative measures in place to ensure that those that are in positions of privilege and prosperity continue to enjoy that kind of financial freedom, where if you're elsewhere, and that's like, beyond 99%, it's almost everybody else is trapped in a pitiful and pointless race to try and sort of somehow join them or get some of a few drops of that trickle down they're always on about. Like, I don't want to pay more taxes than I have to. We're all bloody same. It's just that the systems that we have don't work. They do not work. I hope you enjoyed that video. Even if you didn't, comment below. Tell us what you'd like to see more of. Tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with, what other kind of things you'd like to see investigated. Please subscribe to this channel. And if you find that you might need help with your mental health, and I wouldn't be surprised if you did, subscribe to my channel Awakening, where there's all meditative tips and well-being tips. If you can and want to, subscribe to Luminary, where my podcast is held. You can get it on Apple. I do one podcast a week, Under the Skin, where I talk about important issues, and one, Above the Noise, where I meditate every single week. Please subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my mailing list at russellbrand.com, and have a little look at this video. You'll really like that. And have a look at this guy. What a fantastic video. And what goes on there, that stays down there.